Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So for this video right here, I want to talk about They Cloned Tyrone. This is a film on Netflix. I encourage people to check it out. And I'm going to provide a brief summary of the film. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the plot and everything like that, but it is a film that I recommend. You know, this is a comedy / action film, but even though it's like a comedy, there's a lot of deep subjects that are touched upon in this particular film. You know, for instance, this film is basically about cloning in the Black community. It's about a government program or some underground program to clone Black people, to monitor Black people, and to control Black people. So you have these cloning sites that are hidden underground. The cloning sites are, one is hidden in a church, one is hidden in a convenience store, one is hidden in a house, and behind the scenes they're creating all these clones. They're cloning certain types of Black people. For instance, they're creating multiple clones of drug dealers and gangsters and pimps. So they're cloning Black people, but they're cloning certain types of Black people. The other thing is this: they are using this cloning technology to transform some Black people into white people. One of the people who is behind this whole operation basically says that assimilation is better than annihilation, basically suggesting that Black people need to assimilate into white society in order to not endure certain types of suffering and pain. And, you know, this movie is multi-layered. There are a lot of messages in it. Another thing that they talk about is mind control and the control of Black communities. You know, they talk about the need to have certain types of Black people in certain communities to keep the Black community in a certain state in order to make it an environment that's conducive for them to conduct these experiments. And in addition to that, this film is about mind control, how they have control over these clones, how they use certain chemicals that they put in the food, that they put in hair products in order to control the mood of Black people. For instance, there's a chemical that they put in chicken in this film that makes Black people essentially high and giddy and laughing and stuff like that. They have a chemical that they put in the grape juice, which has Black people ecstatic, dancing and laughing, you know, just having a ball in church. You know, like, you know, those scenes in church where people are catching the Holy Ghost. Basically, in this film, they made it seem as if this grape drink, you know, had the same, you know, it had these chemicals in it, and it made Black people act like that, like they caught the Holy Ghost and like they're having a big party. And they also talked about music as well, music as a form of mind control in this film. There's a scene where they're in the strip club and they're playing a certain type of music that is controlling people's minds. So this movie is definitely profound, is definitely deep. You know, one of the things that they say about this hair relaxer that has a chemical in it as well that relaxes people, makes them chill out and stuff like that. You know, they had a saying that straighter is greater, and that goes to the whole self-hatred that we deal with in the community. They also talk about advertising, you know, not only advertising of this hair relaxer, quote unquote, but advertising of food products, you know, like the chicken. You know, they had these stereotypical ads targeting Black communities and Black people taking this chicken and, you know, getting intoxicated by the chicken and stuff like that. And one of the things that they were joking about is conspiracy theories. You know, they were like, you know, making light of it. Like basically when somebody would point out that this stuff is going on, you know, there was some reference to it being a conspiracy theory and stuff like that. So you know how quick people are to dismiss talk about conspiracies and stuff like that. And I'm one of the people that dismiss conspiracy talk for, some obvious reasons, but conspiracies actually do exist. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack in this film. So I want to talk about it step by step. Um, but before I do that, I have to say a little bit more about the plot. So they clone certain types of black people to control the black community. They're not cloning black lawyers. They're not cloning black doctors or engineers or anything like that. They're cloning thugs, basically, cloning pimps that exploit black women. They're cloning gangsters that shoot up black neighborhoods. So they want to create a certain environment that they can control. And there's so many metaphors or similes in this particular film, so many messages. And one of the messages that I want to talk about is just how our community has been targeted. Our community has been targeted for certain products. For instance, back in the day, they used to target the black community with malt liquor. They had rap artists celebrating malt liquor as something cool, 40s and stuff like that. And you also have, menthol cigarettes and stuff like that that are targeted towards the black community. And nowadays they have like these flavored cigars, that are targeted to our community. They are deliberately targeted to our community, giving us certain flavors and stuff like that. And as I saw the people being intoxicated by this chicken, the first thing I thought about is how our communities are being targeted now with, these edible products and marijuana. Like that's the big thing now, targeting our communities. You see these shops on every corner in our community. It's not a coincidence. As long as you are high, intoxicated, you're not going to be focused on black power. You're not going to be focused on the liberation of your people. You're going to be focused on chilling and partying and stuff like that. And when I think about the impact of the music as well, that's another thing that has to be addressed, like the music that we listen to. But before I get into that, we have to go back to the whole thing about alcohol being targeted towards our community and tobacco products being targeted to our community as well. We know that tobacco has deadly effects. We know, it causes cancer and all that kind of stuff, but that stuff is being targeted towards our community, with these flavored cigarettes and all that kind of stuff. And then the alcohol targeted in our community, every other corner, you have these alcohol stores, in our neighborhoods and stuff like that. And that's not by coincidence, that's by design. And I think that that's part of what they're touching on in this particular film. So, it's profound. And then the impacts of these things are destroying our community. We look at the food, for instance. They're talking about this grape drink, this in this particular film that they distributed in a church. So it had the effect of people having the Holy Ghost, dancing and stuff like that, and just like being intoxicated again in a different type of way. And I thought about how, there are two things that came to mind with respect to that whole church scene where they're all intoxicated, with this grape drink and stuff like that. The first thing I thought about was how we got all these alcohol stores on every corner in our community. And we also have these churches on every corner in our community. Instead of these churches being about empowering the community economically, being a vehicle for social change, as the church used to be back during the civil rights movement, these churches are a lot of times fixated on materialism, and they're fixated on basically making people high so that they can tolerate this life and just continue with this life, this physical life, and just have hope for something in the afterworld. They are literally in an intoxicated state when they're doing all this hooping and hollering and, quote unquote, experiencing the Holy Ghost. while they're having that heaven in their church, this intoxicated state within their church, when they leave their church, their communities are in disarray. Our communities are in disarray. We got all these churches that are basically doing nothing for our people but keeping our people intoxicated. And it reminds me of what Karl Marx said when he said that religion is the opiate of the people. That's one of the things that I thought about when I saw that grape drink being distributed in that church, and that drink intoxicating people. And it wasn't just about the drink. I think that's a metaphor for the role that the church has played in recent years in our community. There was a time when the church was a source of inspiration in our community, inspired people to have faith to face the police dogs, inspired people to have faith to do whatever they needed to transform society, to bring about a more democratic society, a more just society, a more perfect union. But today, there's a focus on prosperity gospel and stuff like that. There are people that only think about the afterlife and don't think about this real life that we're living right here and now. So yeah, in a lot of ways it's intoxicating. And then when we look at like this chemical that's in this grape drink, one of the first things that I thought about, another thing that I thought about was the chemical being like the sugar that's in everything that we eat and consume. There's studies that compare the effects of sugar on the mind. There's similarities between how sugar affects us and how cocaine affects us. And I think that they were saying something about that, because sugar affects mood in some ways. Sugar has had a devastating impact on our communities. When we consume all this sugar, it contributes to obesity. It contributes to the diabetes that's plaguing our community. So, yeah, I think that this movie is profound. And then the other thing with respect to clones, and I'm going to get to the music in a second. The thing about the clones is it's not just about like the physical clone. I think that this story is deeper than a physical clone. It's talking about certain types of people that this society produces, and certain conditions that produce these people. Like the drug dealer, the pimp, and the hoe, and all that kind of stuff. They are products of a certain environment, a toxic environment. So that's one thing. And then also, it goes to stereotyping as well. That's how they view black people, and they want to see more of those types of black people in order to keep our communities in an oppressed and depressed state, to keep our communities in a suppressed state by proliferating these types of prototypes of black people. And that goes right into the music. The music plays a key role in the perpetuation of these stereotypes. By promoting these images as positive, the most negative images of the black community are celebrated, are idolized. Like the image of the drug dealer, the image of the killer and the thug and stuff like that. We see blatant examples of this in that so-called drill music, in that trap music and stuff like that. And people want to emulate those people. So they are essentially becoming the clones that this film is talking about. So that's one of the things. And the other thing is this. In the film, they talked about or provided an example of music being used to control people's minds. And I think that that's deep right there as well, because in a lot of ways, today's music is being used to shape the consciousness of the people. Where you have like the drill music that I talked about, it is not just music, People die behind that music. People beef and shoot each other behind that music. That music has very real consequences in the real world. So in some ways you can say that there is some kind of mind control aspect to the music. You have the pop, there was a time when being a drug addict was something that was that was frowned upon. There was a time when that was something to be ashamed of. But today's music celebrates the dope fiend. Today's music celebrates people getting high off of lean and codeine and off of Percocet and all that kind of stuff. They celebrate that kind of stuff. The most popular rap artists are telling people about, using those products and making it seem like those are cool things to use. And you can't tell me that that doesn't have an impact on our community. It is not a coincidence that major corporations pay these entertainers millions of dollars to promote their products because they know that those artists have an impact on our communities. So if those artists can convince you to buy certain products, to buy certain clothing lines that they're advertising, what makes you think that they're not influencing people to use drugs, to engage in criminal activity, to be involved in gangs, to be involved in thought culture? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that can be unpacked here. This whole idea of assimilation, this idea that black people need to become white in order to be accepted by the society. That's sick. The idea that something is wrong with black hair as it naturally grows out of our heads, that somehow we have to straighten our hair to look like the white woman and white man, the same white woman and white man that are responsible for our oppression and our degradation. So this film is multi-layered, and I encourage people to check it out. And they also deal with this concept of black on black crime. There's a joke about it originally, but in this film, they talk about how they show these clones being subjected to mind control, where they have them fighting 1 minute and hugging the next minute. So that makes me just think about how this so-called black on black violent situation that you see in our communities is not some coincidence. It's a product of, certain conditions, certain social economic conditions that are driven by the larger society. So those are a few thoughts about this. I'm really interested in hearing from y'all. What did y'all think about They Cloned Tyrone? How many of y'all saw it? What did you think about it? What do you think about this commentary here? Are there some additional points that I missed? So with that, please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, and hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Also, I wanted to remind people to like New Possibilities Book Club on Facebook. I'll post a link to it. Our next discussion will be the last Sunday of this month at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We meet via Zoom. Soon we'll be meeting in person. And the book that we'll be discussing next is Sister Soldier's Life After Death. I hope that you all can join that discussion. The book club reads great black books written by great black authors. We read not only fiction and novels, but we also read nonfiction as well. And I hope to see you all at the next meeting. Peace and blessings. Have a great day.